Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome back to another video. Hope you guys been enjoying the content on the channel as of late. Just keep doing my thing. Um, Got an interesting topic for today. I think this was brought on, I think today. I want to say today, um, or was it yesterday? It might have been yesterday. Um, but this is revolving around the DC universe, James Gunn's DC universe specifically, and this comes from Forbes, and I don't know how reliable Forbes is as a organization, but they had an interesting thing that they brought up, and it got me thinking a little bit about where things are going and potentially, longevity. How long things are going to last. But just to point out real quick, apparently, according to Forbes, Superman, the film that came out this year, has generated significantly more than $100 million in profit and approaching 150 million global when it's all said and done this year. It's not a failure. It didn't underperform. It was widely beloved by mainstream audiences and most fans, and no amount of resentment or wishes of lies will change those facts. Now, obviously, there's no proof to this claim, so we don't know, where they're getting their information from. Um, but if I were to bet, on the validity of that claim, I'm going to go ahead and say that it's more than likely false. Just because, I mean, regardless of whether or not, if you believe that the film was successful, clearly it wasn't theatrically, because when you look at the numbers there, and you take into account the ticket sales, that are go 50-50 cuts, within certain markets, domestic or whatnot. The film did not make as much as some people may think. The raw numbers are one thing, but that's not what the studio makes off the movie. So theatrically speaking, the film did not do well, and I sincerely doubt that a film on streaming, like I said in the past, is generating numbers like this, because why aren't studios then just pouring their movies onto streaming? So I think that this is a little bit of a lie, but maybe I could be wrong. But it got me thinking about just where things are going. So I put together a little Google Doc, kind of examining where things are headed and where things were previously, and kind of analyzing, kind of the state of things, and ultimately why I think this incarnation of DC is more than likely going to fizzle out a lot quicker than you think. So let's get into my examination of why. So before we look at James Gunn's universe, obviously let's reflect and look back on the previous cinematic universe, which was the DCEU. Um, this had a 10-year lifespan. So it started in 2013 with Man of Steel, which I talked about. Man of Steel was never intended to be a starting point for a brand new universe. So expectations were different, even though the investments were the same. Once you do your research, the investments were pretty much the same. Um, that wasn't the intentions behind it. So you see, there was a 3-year gap in between Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman, because they were molding over what was probably going to happen, down the line. Are we going to want to move forward with another film with Man of Steel? That obviously didn't materialize. So they decided to actually do something different, and that's when Batman became a part of it, and then the grander scheme of doing a bigger universe. But as you could see, they were heavily into the film front. And this is during a time also when streaming was just kind of absent. Things like Netflix, were around, but these weren't the days of like today with Disney Plus, HBO Max, Apple, all that stuff. That stuff didn't exist back then. So really, Netflix was like the only real player in town. It was only until once we entered the 2020s, and then studios were experimenting, and then the whole HBO Max thing came about from Warner Brothers is when streaming really started to kind of, I wouldn't say blossom, because really streaming has not really gone anywhere and it's probably going to die out real quickly. um, but kind of became more aware to audiences. It became evident and more awares in the 2020s. Hence why a show like Peacemaker, also came into existence and was released on HBO Max. Um, but 10 years they had, and when you look into this universe, there's, they didn't get off with the best starts. Man of Steel did not do great. That's why they never went with a Man of Steel 2. That's why they decided to go with Batman vs Superman instead. Batman vs Superman was also a disappointment for the company. I remember reading that they wanted this to be $1 billion thing. Suicide Squad was their one was their first step in the right direction. Wonder Woman was another step in the right direction. Justice League did just push them back down even further. And then you will notice from here on out, it was just all standalone projects. Obviously still interacting with each other every so often, but not so much a universe anymore, as much as just doing standalone projects. And eventually, though, it met its end in spectacular fashion in 2023, when none of their projects made them any money. And they were already planning off rebooting the universe anyway, because they've already had a slew of failures before that. So this was, even though they had quite a few films come out in this time, a lot of them failed, and that's what led to the rebooting and getting into where we are now. So let's take a look now and see where things are potentially headed. So this is where I think we are headed. So in my eyes, we are going to go from what was a 10-year plan from the DC Extended Universe. And keep in mind, within that universe also, they had made tons of announcements, like well in advance. Well before Batman vs Superman came out, I remember they were making announcements like the Flash film and the Wonder Woman film, and a lot of these films were also in development, at that time. So, that's why you have so many, films, because a lot of these films had gotten in development, and then some of these films were able to see a good return on investment. Then sequels for those films came out, so that's why that series, that specific iteration had more to offer. This, I am predicting, is going to be potentially literally half of the time that specific iteration was. Mainly because of two things. One is that I don't think that there's a whole lot in development. Here's the things that are in bold. Now, one of which specifically, I actually am guessing, because they haven't made an announcement about it, which is a Justice League film. And the reason for that is because I don't think and it's going to get to my second point, but I don't think that the company can wait for whatever James Gunn is wanting to do. But that's my second point. But getting to my first point though, um, you know, in that why I think that it's going to be shorter is because there isn't a whole lot in development. Looking at what is literally in development, the things that are literally going to be coming out that we know about, these three films right here, we know for a fact are going to come out: Supergirl, Clayface, and Superman: Man of Tomorrow. These films we know are going to be coming out. Supergirl is already wrapped; that's already done. Clayface is still filming, and I believe Superman is going to be gearing up for filming here pretty soon. Um, so, or at least no, Superman's going to be filming soon, but they are in the stages of like writing and stuff like that. So those three films we know are going to come out. But Wonder Woman, Brave and the Bold, which is essentially the Batman film, we don't know. Those films have been kind of talked about, but we don't know. Haven't had any strong, developments ever since their announcements. The Justice League thing is literally just my prediction as to what I think is probably going to be their end game. Because my second point about why I think this universe is probably going to end up dying very quickly is literally by what is being released. When you look at what is coming out, what are we missing from the DC Extended Universe? Notability. When you look at the DC Extended Universe, the first four films that came out of that universe was significant properties. You had a Superman film, you had a Batman and Superman movie, you had a Wonder Woman movie, and then you threw a gamble with something like Suicide Squad. You know, when you look at something like with the DC cinematic universe, it's strictly Superman centric. You know, and when your starting point with James Gunn Superman proves to not be as financially promising, and when you're now telling your audiences, hey, the next thing is now going to be Supergirl, it's it's going to be hard to convince people. And Clayface is a gamble. That is a gamble. That is a either going to be the effect of, like Joker, or it just kind of takes off, is accepted, or it's going to be something like from the Sony movies, Marvel stuff, where it just kind of just goes absolutely nowhere. You know, you just don't have notability, even in their TV shows, which they're more heavily invested in than what was before. It's it's not looking good. I mean, we got what, a Green Lantern show, which Green Lantern has not been around for well over a decade at this point. Um, we have just announced a Jimmy Olsen show. Like, again, like being very, very, very specific, with all like Superman centric, being all about that specific movie, and not necessarily being to where you're branching out to anything else, just keeping it in the realm of this, which makes me wonder, or not wonder, it actually, uh, it wouldn't shock me you know, if Warner Brothers is pushing for that Wonder Woman and Batman movie to come out sooner, or to be in development, like soon, because uh, these are what's going to secure them more profit. These right here, I can't guarantee you are going to make you profit. And in that, I don't think that the company is going to be. I don't see personally this lasting for 10 years at a time, because I just don't see the value upon what James Gunn is bringing to it on a creative side. He's choosing to go in a very specific direction within betting on low tier identities, like low tier characters, or not utilizing your major IPs, just saving them, thinking that audiences will just be fine with that, and they'll just be willing to just chew on anything else. No, and it's also a bit arrogant, because it's not considering the financial side of things, which is why I honestly believe that the Superman sequel is more of a creative decision than a financial decision. I don't believe that Warner Brothers is completely confident in that. I think that this is more in line with the development that was with Joker 2, where they're like, okay, let's just see what happens, Whereas the difference between Joker and Superman is that Joker was a huge success, very profitable for that company. This, I highly doubt, was really profitable for them. So, so I just don't see a long lifespan for this. I just don't. And also, to add more validity to my claim, a little something is going on right now within Warner Brothers, which is a sale. We all know that right currently, and potentially here in maybe 5 years' time, Warner Brothers might be bought out. Now, we've been hearing things about like Paramount, talking to Warner Brothers, maybe they might get a hold of it. From what I've been reading, they more than likely maybe too, because they have their CEO, who is, I guess, one of the richest people in the world, and they have been, kind of knocking on Warner Brothers' door for the past few months, throwing little pitches or bids here and there. So that's another thing about this. And I don't know if the original DC universe had to deal with this. I think that they had to deal with like creative changes, but not CE. I think CEO changes were involved. I think so. I think that there was a CEO change, but there wasn't a like a complete uh, it wasn't like this where now a different company is going to come in and buy out that company and potentially dictate what that company does with their products. Warner Brothers was always about changing out, at least within that original extended universe. It was just about changing the creatives that were a part of their company, but not adhering to another company's demands. So now there's that aspect that this universe has to contend with. And I think there's a good chance that, because we've been hearing rumors about that too, that James Gunn might get kicked out, or that James Gunn could just get booted out. And I wouldn't be surprised, just because when you look at what is potentially slated, on the television side as well, things that I am predicting will eventually make it through. You know, the Jimmy Olsen show. I mean, maybe Booster Gold, Paradise Lost, which is the Wonder Woman show. These are things that probably will end up coming out, but will they be successful? I really doubt it. I really, really doubt it. I think that the only thing really that I think is going to prove to be well is these two things right here. I think those are your only two bets right now. And that's 3 years potentially down the line for these movies to come out. Now, obviously, there will be other things outside of DC that are outside of the DC universe that's still part of the DC studios, still part of DC, like Batman Part 2, for instance, that will, keep them afloat. But, but in terms of this, which is what they're betting on the most, in the DC division, I just think that these two things are probably going to end up being the best for them, and that's 3 years down the line. So, and I think that at that point there might be a lot of restructuring. There might be a lot of just kind of like what happened here, where there was a plan here, and then all of a sudden dropped it, and we ended up just doing a bunch of solo movies afterwards that didn't really connect to each other all that much. That's potentially where this is going. And I just think, though, it's going to be a lot shorter because, on one end, I don't think that the company can afford to just push out projects like this left and right. Um, and like I said, I just don't think the creative decisions are sound because you are not supporting your major you're not utilizing your major IPs. You're not catering to what the audiences would really want to watch. They're not going to give a fuck about watching potentially Supergirl. I mean, maybe, but not. I doubt it. I don't know who's going to care about a Green Lantern show. Like, I don't know. Uh, and I don't know who's going to be coming in waves to see the next Superman movie. You know, so it's very uncertain. Now, I also predict that there will be a lot of cancellations. We already know that at least two things were canceled. We know that, of course, the Sergeant Rock film, that was the film that Luca Guadagnino was going to direct with Daniel Craig. That just got canceled. Supposedly, James Gunn said that they're still working on it, but I doubt that they are. I mean, like, again, decisions like this, where it's just like who was going to watch this? You know, like, who was going to watch that movie? And I think that that's a part of what James Gunn may be coming to realize potentially within some of these projects is financial stability. Do these films have the potential to make money? In the case of Sergeant Rock, I highly doubt so. It's just it's not notable. Nobody knows what that is. Same thing with a lot of things here. Swamp Thing, I just don't see that going anywhere. Teen Titans, no, I don't see that materializing. There's apparently a Bane and Deathstroke film, which seems like they're kind of riffing off of Deadpool and Wolverine, which just I don't think is going to resonate as much as that film did. Um, And then you have the TV show front, where you have stuff like Waller, which I've been hearing was canceled, which probably should, because who's going to give a crap? Blue Beetle, which was apparently going to get an animated series, which again, who was going to give a shit about that? And a series called Mr. Miracle, which would probably be a miracle if it got made. Like, these are the things that are being thrown around, but nothing like a Flash film, like an Aquaman film, a Cyborg movie, all these other things that hold a lot more weight towards your audiences. None of that's being talked about right now. The only things that are being talked about right now are a Jimmy Olsen spin-off show, the Green Lantern series, Clayface, Supergirl, and a Superman sequel. Everything else is kind of being still developed, but nothing official yet. We know the Wonder Woman and the Batman film will come out eventually because they got to make some money somewhere. But is that enough to salvage where to salvage this whole thing? And like I said, I honestly think that you're going to get to Justice League a lot sooner because I just don't think that they can afford to wait. I don't think that they can afford for this massive creative ambition to go anywhere when now you're 3 years down the line and you're suffering losses, both on TV and in film. Because Peacemaker, I heard season two didn't really do much of anything. So I think that you probably got to get to that place. So that's why I'm adding that film on there because I just don't think that they can afford to wait. So yeah. So I think you're looking at maybe 5 years for this series. I could be wrong. It could go in a lot longer, but I am seeing what is in development and what is probably going to end up getting scrapped. I'll be honest with you, I don't think that Jimmy Olsen show could probably end up going anywhere. There's a good chance that just dies, you know. But for variety's sake, I think that they might just throw it on streaming just to have something different within their television programming within the DC front. But yeah, man, I don't see this series going anywhere more than maybe 5 years. That seems like that's where it might be. That might. It seems like as long as it will last. So yeah. So yeah. Um, I don't know. I don't know if this is gonna go anywhere outside of like I said, like maybe 5 or 6 years. But this is a graphic that I just found, of them kind of putting all of those projects together. This stuff too, like the Authority and stuff like that. It's like that no one wants to watch that. Um, like it doesn't look promising, and I just don't see a lot of financial return on these investments. So being chapter one it might be the only one, given just what is being planned out. So because just to go through it, I mean, this is already out, this is already out, this is already out, this will come out, this will come out. This is not, I don't think that's going to happen. That might happen, that might happen. We know that's not happening. We know that's happening. We know that will happen. That's probably not going to happen. Won't happen, won't happen, won't happen. Like, it's the ones that should be happening is this and this and Clayface also. Like I would say these three are the only things so far that should be happening. Outside of that, a Wonder Woman film should be on the way. We should be seeing other notable characters because that's what's going to draw in more audiences. Because audiences are more content with familiarity than taking gambles with an originality. That's just the truth of it. And I know that James Gunn has his own plans and is looking at it more from a visionary standpoint. That's not how this needs to be looked at. This needs to be looked at more as a financial decision because ultimately that the visionary sensibilities is what I think is going to kill the momentum of this universe. And I seriously think it's going to be like 5 or 6 years, not the 10-year span that was with the DC Extended Universe. So, both from a lack of announcements and a lack of understanding of what's going to make them money. But you guys let me know. Do you guys think this universe is in trouble? I know it may seem a bit early to say just because it's one film and technically two shows, but nothing's been working. Film wise, as far as I can tell, I don't think that Forbes article is really giving the whole story. I think that I don't know if they got misinformation or if they're just examining in a very specific way that's not necessarily the full story. Um, but yeah, it's film wise, it's not been great. Television wise, it's been slumming it. So we'll see. We'll see where things go. But you guys know your thoughts so far on the DC universe. What were your guys' thoughts on where you think things are going, and your hopes for where things will go? Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section below. And that's gonna be it for this video, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. And until then, I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.